And John joins us on the line now. John, good morning.
Morning, Nick. Hope you're well.
Very well indeed, thank you very much. How are you, most importantly, and how are your family?
Yeah, we're good. Jess and myself are both working, but other than that, we're okay. We've just lost the mother-in-law that's been living with us for 8 weeks, but she's had to go back home. So I've no doubt it's going to get a bit chaotic for us over the next couple of weeks until nurseries and what have you are back. But yeah, we're all good. We're all healthy, and so obviously, happy with that.
Yeah. What size string are you looking forward to unleashing when racing does resume?
Well, as is sod's law, probably the biggest one we've had yet. I think we've got about 42 either in training or going into training as we speak, coming out of the pre-training yard at the moment, plus 8 or 9 in the sort of syndicate that we're involved in as well. So, we had hoped it would be quite a big year for us, but, such is luck, I suppose.
Well, it may yet be. We are only in May. You've got north of 50 horses potentially going to run either for you or in partnership. How do you feel you've been looked after from an ownership point of view through this crisis so far?
Personally, and I may be alone in this view a little bit, but I personally don't think it's been great so far. I think the position of the BHA and Racing's Resumption Group has been a little bit wishy-washy. It seemed completely at odds with guidance that we were getting elsewhere, that racing was unlikely to come back until June at the earliest, and these were messages we were getting way back in March, and that really wasn't telegraphed via either the BHA or the Racing Resumption Group, and it kind of incentivised and gave catalysts to trainers and others to, well, let's give it 2 or 3 weeks and we'll see what's going on, and I just feel like we've been strung along a little bit when, outside of those two groups and their supposed discussions with government, all the signs were that we were never going to start as early as they'd hoped.
Where was your guidance coming from back in the spring?
Yeah, well, I obviously can't name names because they're clients, but we do have a client that works in government. He's not an MP, but he works in government, and he was pretty clear from towards the back end of March that it was unlikely that there would be any sport until June. And if it was June, we'd be lucky. And that was a position he'd maintained even 2 or 3 weeks ago when we were sort of coming out with potential resumption plans on the 15th of May. And, I started questioning whether he'd been feeding me duff information, but, it turns out he wasn't. So I just feel like we've been strung along a little bit, and I'm not saying we should have started earlier at all. I think we should only be starting as and when it's both safe and okay to do so. But I just think there's been a bit of smoke and mirrors to sort of encourage and try and persuade owners to keep horses in training. We have kept all of our horses in training that were with yards, with one exception who's been retired and covered and is now a mare. But we personally have tried to support trainers as much as we can by keeping our horses in training. But there's a few that would have ran in the spring and then naturally had a summer break, and they've neither had their run, and you kind of think, well, is it a waste of time giving them a break now, given that they've missed the runs they would have had? And I don't know. I just feel that we've been suckered into this a little bit.
So I suppose that's the important question, isn't it? Of those 42 horses, or north of 42 horses that you have in training, had you known in March that we wouldn't be resuming till June, how many of those would you have taken out of training? What difference has it made to your purse, essentially? In our case, there was probably only half a dozen that would be
spring and autumn ground horses. And we probably should have taken them out of training, because they're now unlikely to get their ground for a few months. If we'd been as clinical as the O'Learys, then we might have had the opportunity to just take them all out of training, send them somewhere cheaper and bring them back at a more realistic time. Now, we wouldn't do that because we're not quite as commercially clinical as them, but I do think across the industry, more owners, might have been in a position to do that had they been given clearer guidance. And whilst it may help us all out in the short term that they're still paying training fees, etc., the reality is it's probably going to take a lot of owners out of the game in the longer term. So it's just short-term gain, long-term pain, which is probably not what racing needs.
Let's look forward now then from here on in, and on the basis that the roadmap is correct and June the 1st is the resumption day, what can the sport do for owners like you? What can sport do for owners to soften the blow, if you like, to ease the pain?
Right, I mean, it is tricky because, obviously different owners have different mindsets. From our perspective, I'd be quite happily locked up as a family in the bedroom watching racing on TV if it meant we were racing. But I spoke to a few trainers and obviously a few syndicates, and clearly they have owners whose interest lies in going to the races, and they're more keen on actually being at the races rather than just the horses running. And at the end of the day, really that's the thing. To a certain extent, I think has been forgotten in this is the horses themselves and what's right for them. So what the sport can do to help owners in that respect, I don't know, because obviously people sit on different sides of the fence in terms of what their objectives are and where their interests lie. So that's going to be tricky. But obviously we all pump a lot of money into the sport. It's going to be a compromise season one way or another. And I think, in general, all owners want is to see a sense of, or a degree of common sense and logic applying. And the likes of Ascot taking place 2 weeks into the season doesn't seem like a great start in applying a degree of logic, to be honest with you.
So what would you do if you were Ascot?
Well, I mean, I don't know what Ascot's motives are for being so keen to keep, the fixture at the dates that it is. But, I think across the whole season, not just Ascot itself, but I think we need to apply some logic and just condense the season. And, fixtures that were ordinarily 7 weeks into the season are now going to have to be 5 weeks into the season, and ones that were 10 become 8 weeks, and, just push things back, but kind of concertina from both ends to a certain extent. But, the thought of, I mean, can you imagine what these 2-year-old races are going to be like on the first 3 or 4 days of the season? And every maiden's going to be like a group race as everyone, sets their rockets out on the first couple of days of the season in the hope of, getting a run, getting experience, getting a win, and then allowing enough time to recover for Ascot. I mean, whether it's behind closed doors or a normal festival, it's still something that owners large and small aspire to win at. And some people will have the type of horse that they'll only come across once in a lifetime, so they'll all be keen to take advantage of it.
John, let's finish on a positive note. What I want to know is where are the John Dance rockets, and when are they going to be unleashed?
Oh, gee, I wish I knew. I mean, there's a few that I'm keen on, and the one I've been talking about for a year, and I know Jed O'Keefe is probably you're going to have my guts for saying this horse yet again, but it's the only one that I've got, a clear picture on. But there's a horse with Jedi teeth called Continental. She's a 3-year-old. Hopefully we'll see her in the first sort of couple of days, week or so of resumption. But we think she's very special. So hopefully she's the next rocket with a degree of surety. And I'd like to think there's half a dozen or so, if not more, 2-year-olds that could be exciting.
And what news of Lauren's?
She's great. She had a 30-day scan, I think it was, in the last week or so. All good. And she'll get scanned again at 40 days. And if all's well then she'll come back from the Irish National Stud at that point. So,
remind me who she's in foal to?
She's in foal to Invincible Spirit.
Great. And she's well and coming home.
Yeah, she's in great shape, and I know that the guys at the Irish National Stud have been very kindly looking after her since the back end of last year. It's done a great job. So. Obviously, we might not be able to see her ourselves for a little bit, even after she comes home, but yeah, we're looking forward to seeing her again.
John, thanks.